Ark has released countless amazing creatures over the years, but there's no denying that they've also released some creatures that a majority of players weren't necessarily pleased with. In this video, I'll rank the 15 creatures Ark players hate the most and explain why they suck so much. I'll also cover how to deal with all of these creatures very easily so you never have to deal with future headaches with these ever again. Before I get started, I'd really appreciate you subscribing if you aren't already. The channel's at about 19,000 subscribers right now, and I really want to get to 20,000 by the end of August. Thank you, and without further ado, let's get into it. At number 15, I kind of have a mosh pit of multiple really small and annoying creatures, including the Titan Amirma, the Mega Nura, and the Leeches. These are all just small threats that are really obnoxious to deal with. The bugs consistently get in your face the entire game and are literally designed just to burn your stamina and waste your time. As they hit you, they inflict you with a stamina drain debuff, and on top of this, they're also usually hitting you when you land as you're out of stamina with a flyer, so it just wastes a ton of time. And they also force you to attack them so you stop getting stamina drain debuffed, which uses even more stamina, so they just waste a ton of time. They're always in your face. In the early game, they're really annoying too because there's so many of them, so it takes forever to kill them. And leeches are annoying for a different reason, but they're no better. They're less common, they spawn in the swamp, so you're not going to run into them nearly as much. But if they do leech you and give you swamp fever, there goes 10 minutes of your time making a lesser antidote. All three of them are useless utility-wise, you can't tame them for anything useful, so their entire purpose in the game is just to be annoying. At least the bugs drop chitin, which I guess is somewhat nice in the early game, but at a certain point in the playthrough, all three of these are just net negatives on the map. I know leech blood isn't necessarily a useless item because it's used in lesser antidote, but if leeches didn't exist, you really wouldn't need the antidote nearly as much. You can also just use horns, which are significantly easier every single time you're trying to make these, because finding woolly rhinos in a giant white snow biome is a lot easier to spot than leeches that hide in the water in a swamp. The best way to counter these is pretty simple though. For bugs, you have two choices. You can either just kill them and suck it up, which is pretty much what everybody does. You want to just kill these because they're never going to stop draining your stamina, so trying to fly away or trying to wait for your stamina to go up before you attack them is really just wasting your own time. They're also easy and worth killing in the early game just because they give you chitin and you can easily knock them back with any melee weapon. As long as you have a backup spear so you don't get screwed over by one breaking, you're going to be totally fine against these with the knockback it provides. Or you can just have a cat or a center macrops as your shoulder mount. These two creatures actually are equipped with an ability to scare off a lot of small predators. This will come up more than just this once in the video, but they are useful for all three of these. To get a leech off you, just jump on a campfire. After they burn a little bit, they'll leave you alone. An old fix for Swamp Fever was transferring to Scorched Earth, which was also removed, which makes leeches a little bit more annoying. In fairness, they also gave you Swamp Fever 100% of the time a couple of years ago, but now they don't give you nearly as much, so I guess this kind of balances out. There's just no upside for these, but they're not annoying enough to be higher than this. There's a lot of really hated creatures in this game. At number 14, I have the Lead Sickthis, and the Lead Sickthis just sucks. The reason it sucks so much is because it just destroys rafts and motorboats. It's basically a griefer in the PvE side of the game. The problem with Lead Sickthis is there's not that many amazing solutions to it, especially in the early game when you don't have too many super strong underwater tames. Normal Lead Sickthis can destroy a raft in a couple of hits. They can also destroy motorboats, but they take a little bit of a while to do that. And Alpha Lead Sickthis can two-shot rafts. It's also worth noting that both of these whales are pretty quick, so you're not outspeeding them with a raft pretty much ever. Alpha Leads also outspeed motorboats, but you'll always have time to get back to the shore if one starts attacking you, which makes a motorboat one of the best solutions to getting crushed by Lead Sickthis in the game. With that being said, getting a motorboat in the early game and powering it is very out of the picture, so I'll talk about some other ways you can deal with these in a second. Here's the reason Lead Sickthis are really devastating. When your raft or your motorboat gets destroyed by a Lead Sickthis, you're pretty screwed because realistically speaking, all your stuff that's on the raft is going to go to the bottom of the ocean and be gone for good. And any land tames you had on the raft, because you're moving around as a portable base, are just going to be cooked too because they're stuck in the middle of the ocean and you're probably dead. If you're later in the game and you have a portable base on it, you have a bit of a better chance because you probably have some strong underwater tames surrounding your raft. If you don't have any strong underwater tames surrounding your raft, you're going to get cooked eventually by these whales. You really don't need anything too crazy, but having something there on neutral or aggressive is super helpful. These whales are giant and they look super strong, but unfortunately for the whales, their stats do not back up the size at all. If you're in the early or mid game and you don't have any strong underwater tames that are ready to kill the Lead Sickthis for you, you have two choices. First, you can just stay by the shore, which completely mitigates any chance of a whale screwing your day up, because whales are huge yet again, so they really can't get you if you're on the shore. Secondarily, you can also just raft around while you have orbital camera on, so you can scan the area around you as you raft. This is even more effective if you pair this with the r.fog_0 command to clear all fog for the underwater area to make you see crystal clear. If you do this and you keep panning around your camera, you're pretty much never going to get snuck up on and you're never going to get screwed over. If you do see a Lead Sickthis when you're doing this, get back to the shore as fast as possible. At number 13, I have piranhas, and this one is pretty self-explanatory. Piranhas are just assholes. If you're in the early game and you're trying to cross water, you are not going to be able to cross that water a lot of the time because piranhas are just going to not allow that to happen. They're fast, they come in numbers, they come out of nowhere a lot of the time too. I've had so many experiences where I've scanned the entire water, swam halfway across, and then just got swarmed by 25 of these things. They do a lot of damage, they're tanky enough to survive you trying to kill them with early game weapons. And the reason they're so annoying is because they just don't let you traverse the map. It's really, really annoying to traverse the map when you can't cross any sizable body of water. There's a couple of pretty basic ideas you can use to counter piranhas, like just checking the water very thoroughly, only crossing shallow bodies of water until you have a tame so you can ride across a tame and it can tank the piranhas till you get across, waiting until you have good enough gear to just crush the piranhas, and even something as simple as jumping and parachuting over the water can work. With that being said, the easiest way to avoid piranhas in the game by far is just bobbing up and down your character as you're swimming. Bobbing your character model up and down is going to be enough for you to survive the piranhas and cross the water, which is all you really need because once you get to the other side, you can heal back up. At number 12, I have the Pegamastics, which is probably no surprise to you. If anything, this may need to be higher. The Pegamastic steals their stuff. Primarily, it steals food out of your inventory, and most primarily, it steals stuff out of the 9th slot in your hotbar. In the early game, this can be really problematic because they're not super slow, they'll jump at you, they're tanky enough to deal with early game weapons decently well, and they're really good at getting away from you once they steal your stuff. I could go on and on about early game experiences I have of Pegamastic stealing my most important stuff. There's even some experiences I have of it stealing my late game items like blueprints from when I go underwater cave diving. One time it stole a Mastercraft long neck BP from me and I literally broke my keyboard. It was a bad experience. It was not good. With all that being said, it's really not super difficult to deal with Pegamastics. The most obvious solution is just leaving a very, very bad item in your 9th slot or just some random berries in your 9th slot. Unlike the Ichthyornis, which I'll get to in a bit, the Pegamastics is guaranteed to take your 9th slot item if it's there. Situations like I described where you lose a really good BP or a really important item is when you don't have anything in that slot and then you just get really, really unlucky afterwards. Another really basic solution that's not as effective is looking at your HUD all the time. There will be a pop-up on your screen if a Pegamastic steals from you, so you may have time to go find it and kill it before it gets away from you. And you can also just use a cat or a Cinemacrops like I described earlier, or just hit a Pegamastics with a bola and then use any weapon on it. When it gets hit with a bola, you'll have 30 seconds to hit it with whatever you want, and it's gonna die. It's not tanky enough to deal with that. So this is generally my solution in the early game. The Pegamastics is also now a really good tame in Ark Survival Ascended, which makes it way less hated in my opinion. It's able to passively collect gacha crystals now, which make it basically a must-have for automatic gacha farms. I really wish they did changes like this to other creatures in the game. It would make not as fun creatures a lot more bearable because you at least have something to do with them. At number 11, I have the Canadria, and this jellyfish is just mean. Its entire gimmick is that it stuns you underwater, which is obviously annoying. We've all died to one at least once. And they also make no noise when they swim around, which is a serious issue when you rely on audio for so much in this game. On the bright side, they're extremely easy to see if you use the r.fog_0 command. They glow up really, really bright, and they're very slow swimmers as well, so you can really see them coming. And there's also a plethora of tames in the game that just do not get affected by stuns, which are my recommendations for when you're traveling underwater for pretty much every circumstance. Using a stun immune creature not only helps you deal with jellyfish, but also helps you deal with the eels, which we'll get to much later in the video. The eels are a much bigger threat because they're less bright, so they're harder to spot. They're a lot faster, and generally they're spawning in more important areas like caves. Jellyfish at least spawn towards the surface usually, or just out in the open sea. And they're also really not very tanky at all. The stun immune creatures I was referring to are the Archelon, Basilosaurus, and Tuzoteuthis. The Archelon actually gets a buff off killing these. And jellyfish do also drop Biotoxin, which makes them somewhat useful because Biotoxin is useful for pheromone darts, taming the Yi-Ling creature that came out with Aberration Ascended. And ironically enough, dropping Biotoxin is one of the most useful things any creature on this list does, which more so goes to show how bad the creatures on this list are, but it also helps the jellyfish's case. Hey everyone, hope you're enjoying the video so far. I wanted to quickly plug my Twitch because I've recently started streaming over there. I've been playing a ton of games with viewers like Peak recently, and it's been a ton of fun for everybody. So if you're interested in checking that out, I'd really appreciate it. The link is down below, hope to see you there. Up next I have the Ichthyornis. The Ichthyornis is basically a worse version of the Pegamastics I mentioned earlier. The reason it's worse is because it flies around as opposed to being on the ground, so it's harder to kill. And instead of grabbing your items and running away with them, it just swoops down, takes an item out of your inventory, and eats it. Luckily for you, there are easy ways to deal with the Ichthyornis. First of all, if you're a gamer, you can just bola it, you could shoot it with any projectile, or you can just run away from it because it's not super fast. Generally speaking, its aggro range is really not that large, and it has a very predictable circling flight pattern that you can easily hit it with if you're ready for it. Other really easy solutions are using a cat or a Cinemacrops again, they also scare off these, or you can just not build near a beach. Pegamastics do spawn in a couple of spots around the map that aren't just on beaches. The Ichthyornis literally are just on the shore. So once you're out of the early game, you're really not going to run into too many of these ever again. And if you do run into these, it's generally really easy to just kill them before they dive you. Pegamastics are a lot better at sneaking up on you in the late game than Ichthyornis are. So once you get out of the early game, it's really not too bad to deal with these, which is why I only have it in 10th place. It's also worth noting that the Ichthyornis is not a terrible tame in itself. You can actually use it to go kill dodos for prime meat or fish for raw prime fish meat. And it's also a shoulder pet, which is always a good thing. Shoulder pets give you insulation bonuses, extra DPS in a pinch, and have weight reductions, so they're always a good thing. The Ichthyornis is definitely super hated on, but I think it gets hated on way too much, to be honest. And although a lot of the memes in Ark are about how much people hate these, I don't think people actually hate these nearly as much as a lot of other creatures. At number 9, I have the Onyx. The Onyx is really annoying for one reason: Mega Rabies. The big issue with them giving you Mega Rabies is two things. One, they can hit you even when you're on the back of a creature, which obviously is really annoying. And two is that there's so many of them and they spawn in really important objectives. The main places you'll find Onyx are in caves, and then you'll see them in some boss fights, and you'll see them in Scorched Earth on the open world sometimes. The biggest issue, of course, is during caves and boss fights, you really don't want to be dying because your important gear is going to either be stuck deep in a cave, or it's going to be completely lost because if you die in a boss fight, all your stuff goes away. There's really only two counters to Onyx. The first counter is just bringing Lesser Antidote with you wherever you're going that you expect to see Onyx. If you're going to the Medusa boss fight in Astraeos, bring Lesser Antidote. If you're going into a cave that has bats, so pretty much every cave, bring Antidote. Or secondarily, you're going to have to bring something that prevents you from getting rabies. For example, an Andrewsarchus can do that with its saddle, it'll protect you. Those aren't in Ark Ascended yet, but they're really useful for Ark Evolved, especially in certain caves. But even if you're bringing something like an Andrewsarchus that protects you from bats, I'd still bring Lesser Antidote into a cave. The reason is, if you have to dismount the Andrewsarchus to, for example, grab an artifact or farm a cave drop, there's still a chance of a bat coming out of nowhere, hitting you, giving you rabies, and then it doesn't really matter if you go back into an Andrewsarchus saddle that's protecting you because you're just screwed. Mega Rabies kills you really fast, so if you get it and you don't have Antidote, you're gonna die. So just bring Antidote whenever you're going into a cave that has a bat, or whenever you're going to the Natrix boss fight in Ascended. The Onyx is also by far the worst tame in the entire game. I think the design is pretty cool for it, but there's actually zero functionality for when it's tamed, and it's incredibly annoying when it's not. At number 8, I have the Summoner, and this might not be a well-known enough creature to be this high on the list, but anybody who knows about this thing despises it. The Summoner is not a tameable creature, and it spawns in Genesis 2 in the Rockwell Heart Zone and in the Rockwell Prime boss fight. The Summoner is basically a flying flower that targets you, sends creatures at you, and the thing literally has phases where it has a force field up that you can't even damage it. If I had to describe the Summoner in one word, the word I would choose would be obnoxious. It's not incredibly dangerous by any means, especially because you have a tech suit on or you're on a strong creature during a boss fight whenever you're dealing with this thing. But the fact of the matter is, it's invulnerable a lot of the time, it summons a ton of damaging creatures at you, it wastes a bunch of your time. They also summon macrophage around the area, which can stun you, which is a serious problem when you're in a tech suit, and there's a lot of stuff that can kill you. There's acid on the floor, there's reapers, there's tentacles that can stun you for longer. It just forces you to not use a tech suit in an area that a tech suit is demanded to not get completely crushed. So it's super dangerous, no taming upside, and it's in a dangerous area, and it's in a dangerous boss fight. All these things combine to make it a very disliked creature. And the thing's hitbox is so big that it can impair your flight with the tech suit sometimes too. It's just really annoying. Luckily for you, I do have one piece of advice that pretty much mitigates all the problems you're going to experience with this thing. If you're in the middle of a boss fight, you are going to have to suck it up a little bit and just kill them whenever they're not invulnerable. But if you're in the Rockwell zone itself, my recommendation is just flying on the ceiling of the area. If you fly way at the top, I've noticed that summoners have a really hard time tracking you and targeting you. And also, when you're up on the top of the arena, nothing's really gonna be able to hit you that it summons. During the boss fight itself, I find it much easier to kill summoners with the exomech than anything else, but if you're using a normal strategy, you can shoot them out of the air, which I do think is worthwhile because it just does so much damage over time if you don't just deal with it quickly. At number 7, I have the Trudon, and this creature is just the worst. To get this out of the way quickly, yes, you can tame it, yes, it deals torpor, and it could be used in some situations, but I've personally never met in 10 years playing Ark a single person who had practical use cases for a tamed Trudon, and the taming process for it, not to mention, is just ridiculously difficult as well and really tedious. Now on to the more problematic side of the Trudon, which is when it's in the wild. At nighttime, these things are incredibly difficult to deal with. The only warning you're going to get from them is their glowing eyes, because they're pretty dark in terms of color scheme, and they're only out at night trying to attack you. They're incredibly fast, they're small, they're hard to hit, there's multiple of them at a time, and they inflict ridiculous torpor. A couple hits from these and you are out cold. The reality is, if you're on foot and have no way to fly away, and 3 or 4 wild Trudons just come and jump you, you're getting knocked out and they're going to kill you. I can't really give you advice in this scenario because there's just not much you can do about it. Even if you have high fortitude, a ton of stim berries, and a weapon ready, it's going to take you a bit to kill these because they're not incredibly weak, so the torpor is going to rack up and it's going to knock you out. With that being said, there are ways to deal with Trudons. First of all, just use a gamma command so the game's brighter. It makes it a lot easier to see everything at night, including Trudons. You should pretty much always have a mount next to you. Whatever the mount may be, it has a higher torpor capacity than you do, and it's going to take a lot longer to get knocked out because your character, regardless of how high your fortitude is, will get knocked out faster than every tameable creature that you can ride in the game. Trudons aren't incredibly weak, but if you're on the back of pretty much any decently strong mount, you will maul through these. They're not that strong. And during the daytime, you have nothing to worry about. Trudons do not do anything in the day. They just go and hide. There's certain instances with a Trudon that are incredibly annoying. For example, really early game stuff. If you're doing an Explorer Note run trying to get your character leveled up and they jump you, you're really screwed there. There's definitely very real reason to hate them. You can't deal with them all the time, but if you have a tame next to you so you don't take all the torpor from them, and you have your gamma up, you should have enough time to at least react to them coming to you before it's too late. At number 6, I have the Prolovia, and this definitely might shock some of you, but I do genuinely think there's 5 creatures in the game people hate more than this. The Prolovia is incredibly annoying because it dismounts you off your tames and stuns you for multiple seconds, so if you're in a cave and this happens to you, you're pretty much dead. They're also incredibly hidden because they burrow under the mesh, so you really can't see them coming very well, especially in certain caves like the ice cave on the island where they're literally just in a wall that you cannot see. The problem here really is the stun duration and the fact that you pretty much are always going to get stunned regardless of what you're riding. The other issue is the location it's stunning you in, which is, generally speaking, really dangerous caves. If the Prolovia only spawned in the ice biome and you got jumped and stunned a couple times and killed, it would definitely be on this list, but it'd be way lower down. But the fact that it kills you during difficult objectives and even during the boss fight, aka the tech cave in this case, which can totally reset your gear and your tames, it's just ridiculously annoying. It definitely deserves to be on here. Luckily for us, Wildcard pieced together the fact that they created a monster here and gave us one foolproof way of countering it. Rare flowers. If you have a rare flower consumed, Prolovias cannot dismount you off a mount. If you're going into any cave in the game where you expect a Prolovia to be there, you can use any website online to see which caves Prolovia spawn in. You are making a mistake if you do not bring rare flowers in just in case. You should always have rare flowers active while you're running through these caves of Prolovias. You will never get dismounted, it's incredibly safe, and it completely bypasses the only reason the Prolovia is hated in the first place. As a tame, it's actually pretty useful. You can use it to stash away some of your gear somewhere on the map. For example, if you get raided, you can just have a Prolovia stashed away somewhere else buried in the ground and you can go get your stuff afterwards. If you're in PvP and you're annoyed by this fact, which is fair, you raided somebody, you want their stuff, you can fly around with a fast flying creature like a wyvern that can carry a parasaur and just have the parasaur detect stuff around the map. It'll detect enemies, including a Prolovia that's buried, and then you can go in and get it. With that being said, it's pretty hard to identify if there's a Prolovia you're supposed to be looking for, but if you're really confident there is one, just use a wyvern plus parasaur. A lot of the time when you raid players and you wipe their base, they're going to do something called popcorning their gear. They basically take all their stuff and drop it out on the floor in a way that makes it decay really fast so you never get the loot. So it's generally pretty difficult to tell if this is what's going on or if they actually have Prolovias or Reapers or something else stashed around the map. But at least there is a way to counter it. If they are on the ground and you find it, you can just C4 it, by the way, and that'll kill it from underground, and then the bag will pop up. At number 5, I have the Seeker, and as an Aberration player, this is actually the creature that I hate the most inside of Ark, but in a general consensus, I don't think it's the most hated creature. Here's the problem. Seekers target light, and they spawn in Aberration where there's Nameless. The reason this is such an issue is because you have to use light on Aberration, or else you are going to get cooked by Nameless and the Reapers that they spawn. They also spawn in really dangerous areas like the Red Zone and the Genesis 1 Lunar Biome, where they're not as bad in the Genesis 1 Lunar Biome because you don't have to worry about the Nameless and aren't forced to use a light pet. But even there, they're just aggressive targeting creatures that you can't tame. They do a decent amount of damage. They fly around. They're really ugly. I could go on and on. You can tell I don't like this thing, whatever. The important thing is that there is a way to counter it. Turning off the light. If you turn off the light, it won't be able to see you unless you're incredibly close to it. That means it won't be targeting you from 4 miles away, which means there's a lot less of them to deal with at a time, which means you can actually enjoy the game. With all that being said, this might sound counterintuitive. I 1000% recommend you suck it up and deal with the Seekers. This is the only creature on this list that I'm saying this for, but honestly, you should not be saying, oh look, there's Seekers, let me turn off the light. It's just not worth it. If you turn off the light, the Nameless are going to attack you, and they're significantly more dangerous than the Seekers are. So the correct decision in these situations is to keep the light on, keep the Nameless away, and suck it up with the Seekers. That's why they're so annoying, because you really don't want to get rid of them. On something like Genesis 1, they're not as bad, just because they only spawn in certain caves in the Lunar Biome, and their targeting radius when they don't have light near them is really low, so you can basically go up and high-five them before they attack you. But the fact that there's a flying, pretty strong creature in swarms in the most dangerous areas on some of the toughest maps in the game, and you really can't counter them because it makes the game harder, easily places it high on the list. At number 4, I have the Electrophorus, which is the electric eel, and this does not need much explaining at all. The electric eel is basically the jellyfish on steroids. It's harder to see, it's much faster, it spawns in way more important areas like underwater caves and deeper in the underwater areas, and they spawn in larger packs than the jellyfish from my experience, so it's incredibly hard to deal with them if you're not ready. I could tell you about 10 experiences this year where I died to an eel because I was just being stupid trying to use scuba to go farm drops. But the reality is the counter is simple. We all know it. Use an Archelon, use a Basilosaurus, use a Tuzo, something stun immune, and if you're going to dismount off that creature, make sure there's no eels in the area because if they come up and stun you, it's a little bit annoying. If you don't have a stun immune creature and you get stunned by eels in a deep underwater cave, you're probably going to die because there's so many other threats there, and the eels themselves do a decent amount of damage. At number 3, I have the Microraptor. The Microraptor is on the list because it's constantly a nuisance in many areas around a ton of maps, so you pretty much always have to deal with it when you play the game. It's not as dangerous as a Prolovia because it doesn't happen in caves, the stun's not as long, and Microraptors are a lot easier to avoid and see coming. But the fact of the matter is, in PvP and in PvE, they're just really obnoxious. In PvP, somebody can just send one at you and you're gonna get stunned. It's really hard to avoid it. You can use this on your end too, but it's not like either of you are having fun doing that. Both players in this interaction are just annoyed by their Microraptor more than they enjoy it. And in PvE, the fact that it's incredibly fast, small, can jump ridiculously high, and spawns in so many areas makes it kinda hard to prep for, so it can just get you sometimes. The biggest issue for the Microraptor though is when it stuns you and then you fall off in a dangerous area like the redwoods, and then get killed by something else. This is what we call getting arked. The Microraptor is the embodiment of getting arked. There is a couple of ways to avoid it. The cat and the Cinemacrop scare it off just like other creatures from earlier in the video. And if you're flying high enough or you're riding on a tall enough creature, the Microraptor is not going to be able to get to you. Realistically though, you're going to get stunned at some point from landing and the thing just jumping you unless you have a cat or a set of Macrops. And in PvP, if you're in the early game and you get stunned by a Microraptor, there's really not that much you could have done about it. They're really, really fast, they're small, they're incredibly hard to hit. I'm not going to tell you to become a god tier aimer and just kill this thing before it gets to you because it's pretty unrealistic. Your best shot is trying to bola it, but even then it's incredibly hard to hit, and even if you do hit it, you're going to have to either focus on killing that Microraptor before it gets out of the bola, or focus the player, and getting both killed at the same time is pretty tough. Generally speaking, I just fly away. Not really worth the effort. At number 2, I have the Capro, and it was pretty close between this and my first place creature, but I am confident with where I placed this. The Capro, like many other creatures on this list, jump you, grab you in its teeth, and take you off your mount. This is a huge issue because they spawn in the swamp, and they just hold you in their mouth until something more deadly comes along and kills you. They're even worse in PvP because players consistently just camp with Capros in the water next to upload spots and jump unprepared players, taking all their most important creatures and items when they're not even ready to defend themselves. The most obvious solution for this in PvE is just flying higher in the air and not landing in the swamp. The downside for the Capro is that it can only jump horizontally. Its jump does not go very vertical at all, so if you're flying over it, it's not going to be able to get to you. You also always want to have flak on you, med brews, and a melee weapon, so if it does jump you, you're prepared to kill it with a melee weapon pretty quickly because they're really not that strong, especially in PvE with no saddle. And then med brew yourself back up and get back on your creature before a more dangerous swamp threat comes over and kills you, like a Baryonyx stunning you in the water, for example. The sword is the most universal option for this in terms of melee weapons to kill Capros, but a pike works just fine. Capros are really not tanky at all. In PvP, the solution is as simple as do not transfer or upload or download or do anything at obelisks that are near water. The most common example of this where people camp with Capros in the water and are really hard to spot is on Ragnarok on the red and blue obelisks. These are really standard camping spots, and if you're not ready for it, they're just going to kill you really quickly because those mutated Capros are mean. I could give you advice like turn off the fog, check the water, look around, but realistically, players that are using Capros to jump you are usually pretty smart players and they're pretty good at avoiding line of sight, so this is simply not a reliable enough strategy for me to suggest it to you. The only reason the Capro is not first on the list is because you can tame it and it is really, really fun to troll your friends with it or to wreck somebody in PvP. With that being said, if you are the kind of person who camps obelisks with a Capro, my best recommendation for you would be to use your Capro to jump into the lava at the top of the volcano on the island. At number 1, it's Nameless. Nobody's surprised about this. Nameless are the most annoying creature in the game. Everybody hates Nameless. Nobody you will ever speak to who has played Ark on Aberration will say they like Nameless. There's a never-ending amount of them. They're in 3 out of the 4 zones on the map. If you don't deal with them, they become stronger because they get bigger packs. There becomes a pack alpha, they summon Reapers on you, and you die. So you're forced to use a light pet to counter them. Whenever your light pet runs out of charge, you have to kill them or you have to go away from where you are quickly because then you're just going to have to deal with them because you're waiting for your light pet to charge back up. If your light pet somehow dies because they're not super tanky due to something like splash damage or an AoE attack, you are absolutely torched. Because if you're in literally any biome besides the green zone and you don't have either a really strong Megalosaurus or Karkinos to get away or a Rock Joker or Yeeling to fly away, Nameless are going to stack up and they're going to kill you in a really annoying fashion. The main reason the Nameless is universally hated though is because the blue zone on Aberration is the best spot in the game to farm metal, which is the most farmed resource in the game. So many players from different servers, different maps, go to Aberration for this one thing, and they all have to deal with Nameless. It's just extra steps you have to prepare for. You can't tame them, they're never-endingly annoying, and they cause you to have to deal with Seekers in the red zone, which is even worse than everything I've described. Seekers suck. And remember that whole thing I was saying about the Seekers being ugly? Yeah, look at the Nameless. Not even comparable. Way uglier. I know how ugly a creature is shouldn't really determine where I'm placing them on the list, but it's my list, and people don't like really ugly creatures. Sorry. Well, that's my list. Thank you to all my members for helping support the channel. You guys are the best. If you enjoyed learning about how to counter these really annoying creatures, I guarantee you that you'll enjoy the video linked on screen now where I talk about the 40 most annoying things in Ark and how to counter them. I'll see you there. Peace.